The email hit her inbox at 6:13 a.m. sharp. Subject line, Mandatory Wellness Week Immediate Implementation. Lena blinked at it twice, half asleep, half pissed, coffee untouched. The kind of HR move that feels like a hug with a knife taped under the armpit. Due to concerning signs of burnout, we're requiring a 1-week wellness break for select team members to recharge. Select team members. As in, you. She wasn't stupid. This wasn't about burnout. This was a corporate muzzle. The investor summit was days away. Her summit, her strategy. 3 months of late nights, market research, endless whiteboarding, sourcing external sustainability data, rewriting the pitch deck from scratch after the CTO called the first version too academic. And now, she was being ordered to go reconnect with nature, while the company closed the biggest funding round since their Series A. It didn't smell right. It smelled like almond milk in July. So Lena did what smart people do when they feel their neck getting warmed up for knife. She checked the server logs. She wasn't supposed to know how, but after 12 years in startups, she'd picked up a few things, like how to track user activity on shared Google Drive folders. There it was. Jeremy R. download. Time, 12:46 a.m. File, Sustainability Investor Final LMPPTX. She stared at it for a long time, letting the coffee go cold. The blood in her face pulled back like a tide before a tsunami. Jeremy, Mr. Let's circle back. Mr. I think Lena and I brainstormed this together. Mr. Big Picture guy who couldn't differentiate EBITDA from edamame if you gave him a flashcard. Her fingers went to the trackpad automatically. Clicked. Opened the master slide. Inserted a transparent 1x1 pixel. Hex code #FFFFFF, top left corner, layered under everything. Invisible to anyone except someone who knew to check. But that wasn't the real trick. The real trick was in the metadata. Deep in the File Info tab, she edited the author field, created by Lena M. Timestamp. April 8, 6:43 p.m. Note, if you're reading this, he lied. She smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind you give someone just before pulling the pin on a grenade and tossing it under the boardroom table. Then she saved it, uploaded it back into the shared folder, and waited. By the way, quick thing before we go further. Apparently 95% of y'all watching these stories haven't hit subscribe. Look, I'm out here exposing backstabbers and corporate gremlins one story at a time, trying to hit my first 10,000 subscribers so I can finally buy myself a chair that doesn't squeak during voiceovers. Hit that button. It costs nothing, but it means everything. Lena packed her bag the next morning like a model employee, left her laptop on the desk, said nothing to anyone. She even dropped a smiling emoji in the company's Slack channel under the HR post about mental health being our #1 priority. But her mind was already 5 moves ahead. She spent the next day lying on the couch, eyes on the company Instagram. Just after noon, a story popped up. Jeremy standing in front of a greenwashed backdrop that said Future Forward 2025. Behind him, her slides, her fonts, her colors. She could spot her layout from a pixel away. He hadn't even changed the title font from Roboto. He was smiling like he'd built the Trojan horse himself. Lena watched the clip 5 times, heart rate low, breath steady. The system had just handed her the gun. All she had to do was keep her hands clean and let it go off by itself. They wanted a quiet Lena. They were about to get the quietest war they'd ever seen. Lena watched the company's Instagram reel loop again, and again like a punch. She refused to duck. There was Jeremy, buttoned up in that navy jacket he always wore to pretend he had authority, standing in front of her exact opening slide. Sustainability in motion, a scalable pivot. That was her phrasing, her damn title. He hadn't changed a single word, hadn't even swapped the green accent she fought for after marketing told her it looked too Forest Y. She watched as he clicked to the next slide, her market segmentation funnel, color-coded, clean. Then to the community pilot case study, her late-night interviews with rural solar installers. Once she transcribed herself because the intern bailed. Her font, her footnotes. Even the quote at the end, long-term impact begins with short-term courage. That was hers. She wrote that in the margins of a napkin at 1 a.m. while sobbing into leftover pad thai. Jeremy delivered it with the smirk of someone quoting Einstein. Then came the real kicker, a LinkedIn post by the VP of Strategy, shared within the hour. Incredible work today by Jeremy R. Strategic insight is helping shape the next chapter of our company. Investors are excited, and so are we. Lena didn't throw her phone. She didn't scream or storm into Slack like a banshee on fire. She took a deep breath, then another. Then she opened a new folder on her desktop. Jeremy fraud evidence. She wasn't just angry. She was methodical. She started with screen captures, the Instagram post, Jeremy's LinkedIn likes, the VP's public praise. Timestamped it all. Then she went back through the edit history of the deck. Every revision, every file rename, every cloud autosave, anything that had her fingerprint on it, she backed up in 3 formats: PDF, CSV, RAW image dumps. She downloaded the original audio notes she'd left for herself while iterating the framework. The one where she muttered, "God, this slide still sucks," before landing on the final version. She found Slack messages to Jeremy 3 weeks ago where she'd sent over an early version of the deck, just for background. He'd responded with, "Looks solid. LMK, how I can help present when the time comes." She didn't respond. Now the time had come, and Jeremy had helped himself. Still, she said nothing. Not to HR, not to her manager, not even to the coworker who once whispered during lunch that Jeremy looked like a guy who'd steal someone's lunch and write an apology note in Comic Sans. She didn't confront him because she wasn't ready to burn the bridge yet. She wanted a crowd watching when it went up in flames. Instead, she sent a quick thanks for the support, folks. Reply in the team's Slack wellness thread, and posted a photo of her coffee mug next to a half-read novel with the caption, "Resting up, charging, resisting murder." No one got the joke. That was fine, they would. She didn't want revenge today. She wanted the system to carry it out for her. Quietly, elegantly, like poison in tea takes a minute to kick in, but when it does, you fall face first in your soup at the gala. So she waited and watched. Because if Jeremy thought stealing her work was smart, he hadn't seen what it looks like when the quiet one takes her gloves off. Monday morning, Ina walked back into the office with a tote bag, a smile, and a silence that made people nervous. She wore that serenity like Kevlar, looked rested, maybe even enlightened, like she'd spent her wellness week meditating in a mountain hut instead of documenting intellectual property theft with the precision of a forensic accountant. "Hey Lena, you look great." Someone chirped by the coffee machine. "Thanks," she said, calm as a lake with a body at the bottom. "Appreciate everyone covering while I was recharging." "Self-care, right?" They smiled. She smiled. Everyone moved on a little too fast. She saw Jeremy down the hallway. He spotted her, then took a sudden left like he'd forgotten how doors worked. Lena clocked the maneuver but said nothing. Just headed to her desk, turned on her computer, waited for the system to boot up like it hadn't just spent a week shoving her into a corporate timeout, while her name got erased from history in real time. Her inbox was a polite jungle of HR newsletters and calendar pings, all fake cheery and aggressively wellness-themed. 7 ways to keep your brain happy. Mindful Mondays reminder, no sign of the fact that her project had been hijacked and paraded around like a show pony by a man who once asked if carbon credits were like airline miles. But the real action wasn't in the inbox. It was in the shared drive. She opened the logs. There it was, confirmation in plain metadata. 4 investor domain addresses had accessed the file titled Sustainability Investor Final LMPPTX on Friday afternoon. Not a copy. Not a renamed version. Hers. Edited, pixel still embedded. Author field still intact. "If you're reading this," he lied. Lena leaned back, eyes flicking over the access trail like a sniper measuring wind speed. They'd gotten her version. That meant the clock had already started ticking on Jeremy's lie. The seed was planted. Now it was just a matter of time before someone, maybe an investor's analyst, maybe a bored IT intern with a God complex, noticed the Easter egg and asked the wrong person the right question. She spent the rest of the morning catching up. Quietly, efficiently, she attended meetings like she hadn't just been blindsided, nodded at updates like they weren't built on her stolen work, even threw Jeremy a half smile in the break room as he pretended to refill a coffee cup that was already full. At lunch, she slipped into an empty conference room, opened her laptop, ran a private metadata scanner on the file, just to confirm. The pixel was there. The timestamp hadn't been altered. The author field was locked. Good. She didn't want to confront him. She wanted them to confront her, to come to her with concern, confusion, apology in their eyes. She didn't want a confession. She wanted evidence to do the talking. That afternoon, a junior product manager mentioned offhandedly that the investor team had really loved the clarity of the deck. "Oh," Ina replied, tilting her head with the innocence of a wolf in a sweater vest. "Glad they got a version that worked." She went home early that day, took a hot bath, ordered takeout, fell asleep watching a documentary about sharks who eat each other in the womb, because Jeremy wasn't floundering yet, but the water was warming, and she was the one turning up the heat. It started with a reply all. Subject line, presentation follow-up clarification needed. Buried halfway through an otherwise dry chain of investor back and forths came the line that stopped Lena's scrolling cold. We noticed an embedded message in the deck metadata. Curious if this was intentional. Says something like, "If you're reading this, he lied." There it was, the trapdoor creaking open. It came from a junior associate at one of the mid-tier investment firms, someone just young and tech-literate enough to poke around where most wouldn't. Lena pictured him, probably sitting in a WeWork with a bubble tea and a god complex, clicking through file properties like he was unwrapping a Christmas gift from his paranoia. The message had been found. And now, the question was floating in investor inboxes across the ecosystem, like a blood drop in shark-infested water. She didn't respond. She didn't even breathe too hard, just flagged the thread and leaned back in her chair, letting the engine of quiet vindication start to hum beneath her ribs. Jeremy, however, did respond. Predictably, sloppily. "Jeremy R., thanks for catching that. Must have been a leftover note from the creative team when we were compiling draft versions. We'll clean that up moving forward." Lena snorted. "Creative team?" The creative team was Lena, a French press, and 3 sleepless nights muttering into Google Docs. Jeremy didn't stop there. No, he doubled down. Followed up with another gem. Rest assured, the strategic direction came from multiple internal collaborators. Happy to loop in the original authors for clarification if needed. There it was. That panicked attempt at plausible deniability dressed up in buzzwords, like a raccoon trying to pass off a trash fire as a campfire. Later that afternoon, Lena's inbox pinged again. New message. Subject, Investor Q&A availability. "Hi Lena, hope you're feeling refreshed after your wellness week. We were hoping to schedule a brief Q&A with some members of the investor team to discuss the pitch deck. Would you be open to joining us later this week? Looping in Jeremy and the board for visibility." She read it twice. Noted the CCs. 3 board members, 2 partners, Jeremy and her. No accusations, no direct praise. Just interest. Seed had been planted, and now they were circling the tree. She replied in exactly 5 words. "Happy to make time, thanks." No exclamation mark, no emoji. Just calm, corporate compliance that reeked of someone holding 4 aces and pretending not to notice the pot swelling. Jeremy tried to speak to her in the hallway the next morning. One of those overly casual, "Hey, just wanted to check in, alignment kind of conversations that happens when someone smells smoke and can't tell where the fire is. She offered him the kind of smile you give a man standing on a frozen lake with a hairline crack spidering under his feet. "Sure," she said. "Let me know if there's anything you need from me before the call." He nodded too fast, walked away like a man trying not to break into a jog. By the time she sat down at her desk, a new thread had popped up. One of the board members had forwarded the metadata message to another partner with just 5 words of their own. "Did you see this yet?" The air had shifted. The lie was no longer his to control. And Lena, she wasn't rushing the fall. She was letting gravity do its job. Wednesday morning, the email subject line was like a drum roll. Internal review, IP clarification, urgent. Lena clicked it open, pretending her hands weren't already ice cold with anticipation. Thread had grown, more CCs now. Legal, HR, 2 directors, even the head of investor relations, all stacked neatly in the recipient pile like dominoes waiting to fall. At the top of the chain, pasted for full visibility, was the text they'd found. File metadata author, Lena M. created April 8, 6:43 p.m. Note, if you're reading this, he lied. Simple, sharp, undeniable. There was something intimate about seeing her message now, broadcast across the company's most powerful inboxes. It was like reading a private confession on a billboard, both exposing and vindicating. She hadn't screamed. She hadn't stormed. She just planted a truth bomb and waited for the company to step on it. They had. By 11:15, Lena was summoned. The collaboration clarification session, as HR called it, was set in conference room 3B, the one with too much glass and not enough oxygen. She arrived precisely on time, not a second early, not a second late, holding a notebook she didn't need and a thermos of tea she didn't plan to drink. Inside, Jeremy was already seated, bouncing his leg like it owed him money. Across from him sat Denise from legal, who looked as if she'd rather be auditing a landfill, and Carl from HR, whose only real skill was using the word nuance to mean we don't want a lawsuit. Denise started. So, investors discovered an embedded author message. Quite pointed. Lena simply nodded. Jeremy jumped in. Right, yeah, so that was, I think we were all iterating together at that point, so maybe Lena added that as kind of a joke. Or like a draft placeholder. I wasn't aware of it, honestly. He laughed, alone. Denise didn't blink. It says, and I quote, if you're reading this, he lied. Is that a placeholder or a joke? Jeremy opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Lena, then back to his legal grave. Lena finally spoke, voice calm, even chilling. I added that message during final prep. April 8, after I completed the deck. Jeremy hadn't requested access until the 10th. He downloaded the file at 12:46 a.m., according to Drive logs. She slid a printed screenshot across the table, timestamp highlighted. Her hand didn't tremble. Carl from HR cleared his throat like a man choking on paperwork. Okay, let's step back. The goal here is alignment. We just need to make sure proper credit is given for collaborative work. Which part was collaborative? She asked, still calm. Was it the data analysis, the pilot interviews, the revised market entry sequence, or the font selection? Because I can show you drafts from February where none of those elements existed until I built them. Jeremy squirmed. Denise stared at him like he was gum on her deposition shoes. Lena didn't raise her voice, didn't lean forward, didn't blink fast like someone trying to prove her case. She let silence do what noise never could, make people think. Legal asked for her drafts. She offered to send them after the meeting. HR asked if she wanted to file an official IP complaint. She said she was happy to cooperate with internal protocol. Everything was phrased like a neutral party. But the undercurrent was clear. She wasn't asking for justice. She was justice, in slacks and a silk blouse served chilled. As she left the conference room, she caught Jeremy's reflection in the glass wall, sweating, pale, unraveling one breath at a time. She hadn't spoken to him directly since the pitch. Still wouldn't, because the longer she kept her distance, the more he would collapse under the weight of his own lie. And Lena had no intention of offering him a parachute. By Friday, Jeremy's face was gone from the client engagement roster. No Slack pings, no CCs, no updates in the shared folders, just gone, like a suit jacket left behind after a fire drill. Official word from HR. He's been temporarily reassigned from external communications while the internal investigation proceeds. Translation: we don't trust him to speak in public until we figure out if he tanked our legal exposure. Lena read the announcement on the all-hands channel with the detachment of someone watching a spider slide slowly into the drain. No glee, no gloating, just confirmation that the trap was holding. That afternoon, she received an email from one of the junior partners at Graybridge Ventures, the investor group that had originally flagged the metadata. Subject: just between us. Hi, Lena. I wanted to say thanks for the clarification earlier this week. That message in the deck, let's just say it landed exactly how it needed to. It's clear now who shaped this project. Some of us suspected as much, but the evidence made it plain. Anyway, sorry you had to deal with that. Let us know if you'd ever be open to chatting about the next stage. We'd love to hear it from you directly this time. She read the message twice, once as a professional, once as a woman who'd been quietly erased and then reborn in her own data trail. Then she closed her laptop and walked to the break room. Jeremy was nowhere to be found. In his absence, the team felt lighter, more focused. Nobody said anything out loud, but the ambient tension, the duck-and-cover energy of working near someone who thinks charm is a personality, was gone. People seemed more willing to make eye contact. Even the printer worked without jamming. Lena noticed. That evening, as she packed her bag, her manager caught her by the elevator. Hey, he said, scratching the back of his neck. Board's reviewing next phase funding. They want someone to walk through the rollout plan for Q3. I think it should be you. Lena paused. Just me? He nodded. They trust you. But they want to make sure it's your version this time. She looked at him for a long second, then replied, I'll do it. I want full authorship. No co-presenters. No edits without my review, and I choose who's in the room when I deliver it. He hesitated just for a heartbeat, then said, of course. She stepped into the elevator, the doors hissing closed behind her like a curtain drawing back. At home, she poured a glass of wine, opened the old deck, began adding her slides. New rollout phases, refined market angles, updated case studies. And this time, every pixel was logged, every chart fingerprinted. Every file exported with an embedded checksum that screamed, "Try me, and I'll break you with silence." Jeremy hadn't been fired, yet, but he'd been quarantined, stripped of his narrative, his charm, his platform, left to sit in a digital limbo while the company recalibrated around the woman he tried to erase. And Lena, she wasn't just building a deck now. She was building a monument with receipts. The boardroom was too cold, the kind of sterile chill that seeps into your joints and makes you feel smaller than you are. Lena sat just outside the door, waiting. The glass panel didn't show much, but she could hear them, voices clipped, murmurs moving like chess pieces across a velvet board. They hadn't invited her at first. Just Jeremy. Alone. Things change fast when your entire funding round is attached to a digital breadcrumb trail leading directly away from your mouth and toward someone else's work. 10 minutes in, the door cracked open. "You can come in now," said Allison from legal, eyes unreadable. Inside, the board members were already seated, their expressions carved from stone. The CEO sat at the head, his jaw locked tight. Jeremy was off to the side, just like a substitute teacher caught using someone else's lesson plan. Lena, the COO, said, motioning to the chair across the table, "Thanks for joining on short notice." She sat calm but bone-tired. Her rage wasn't loud anymore, it was sediment at the bottom of a deep reservoir. Pressurized, cold, waiting. Jeremy spoke first. Of course he did. "I just want to say, from the start, this entire project was a collaborative effort. Lena contributed a lot, absolutely, but so did several others. I helped shape the investor-facing language and led the delivery because, well, we needed someone who could." He didn't finish. Lena didn't interrupt. She simply opened her folder and laid it flat on the table. Inside, neatly printed documentation. Page 1, deck creation log. Timestamped edits starting March 3rd, her initials. His, none until April 10. Page 2, Slack transcript. Jeremy, Lena, can you shoot over the latest draft for review? Lena, sure. This is still early, don't share it out yet. Page 3, cloud access logs. File, Sustainability Investor Final LMPPTX download by Jeremy R. 12:46 a.m. April 10. And then the kicker, page 4, metadata screenshot. Author, Lena M. Message. If you're reading this, he lied. She didn't explain. She didn't narrate. Just slid the pages across the table like she was handing them their own indictment. The silence in the room grew thick, like wet wool. One board member leaned forward, reading closely. Another adjusted their glasses. Finally, a voice, quiet, female, from the far end of the table. "Why didn't you speak up sooner?" Lena looked at her. No smile, no sarcasm, just exhaustion. "Because when people like him take credit," she said, tilting her head toward Jeremy, "don't do it by shouting. They do it slowly, with praise in meetings and accidental omissions, and compliments that erase you while pretending to include you." No one responded. Jeremy looked like he wanted to disappear into the carpet fibers. The CEO cleared his throat, awkward and dry. "Well, I think we need to pause here and process. Clearly, this wasn't what we understood. Translation: you've just shattered the story we built this quarter on. Now we have to pretend we knew nothing." The meeting wrapped with an uncomfortable abruptness. No decisions made, but the shift had happened. The room, once tilted in Jeremy's favor, was now spinning on a different axis. Lena left first, no backward glance. As the elevator doors closed behind her, she felt the sting of that board member's question still echoing in her chest. Why didn't you speak up sooner? She hadn't had the luxury, but she had something better now. Proof. The following Tuesday, Jeremy's name had quietly vanished from the org chart. No announcement, no send-off cupcakes, no farewell Zoom. Just a line in the Monday memo, Jeremy R. will be shifting into an advisory capacity outside the day-to-day operational structure. In other words, exiled to a Slack graveyard and stripped of all forward-facing responsibility. Internally, they called it a reassignment. But everyone knew a white-collar firing when they saw one. Don't go from keynote speaker to strategic support function without blood in the water. Lena didn't celebrate. She didn't even exhale, because the real win hadn't landed yet. That came in a call late Thursday evening while she was rinsing dishes, NPR humming in the background. Unknown number. She let it ring twice before picking up. "Lena, hey, it's Alex from Graybridge." She wiped her hands on a towel and leaned against the counter. "Hi, Alex. What's up?" "Well," said with a careful pause, "first off, congrats. That board meeting was eye-opening. You handled yourself like someone who's done this before." She said nothing. "I'm calling because we've been talking, some of the partner group. The investor interest in your deck is still strong. Honestly, stronger now. What happened with Jeremy, it only confirmed for a lot of people that the vision came from you. So, we'd like to discuss a separate initiative. Her jaw tightened. Define initiative. Spin-off? A new project. We're exploring a green tech accelerator. You'd be the anchor, creative lead. Full autonomy. We back you directly. Not through your current leadership, not through this company, just you. Silence. Then, that's a lot of trust coming from people who didn't believe me a week ago. I know, he said. But some of us did. You gave us the receipts. And you didn't burn the place down, which, frankly, would have been justified. Ina looked out her kitchen window. The city was glowing in that late-night blur, neon advertisements pretending they cared, headlights blinking like tired eyes. She remembered how she'd felt just 2 weeks ago, scrolling through that Instagram post, watching her work being performed by a man who couldn't spell decarbonization without autocorrect. I'll consider it, she said, but on my terms. Absolutely. I choose the team. I own the roadmap. I pick the presentation platform, the press language, the fonts. Hell, I pick the office snacks. Alex laughed. Done. She hung up with a polite goodbye, then stood in the dark for a long time, mug in hand, feeling the strange ache that comes not with victory, but with validation delayed too long. She had won. She had proven it. The lie was undone, the thief exposed, the power shifted back where it belonged. But trust? Trust was a bridge she no longer planned to rebuild. Even the people who supported her had stayed quiet until the proof was airtight, until her evidence could be weaponized. Not one person had interrupted Jeremy mid-lie. Not one had asked, "Where's Lena?" when he stood on that stage using her lines in his polished TED talk voice. So now she had power, and she'd use it. But the warmth, that part of her was gone, and what remained would be sharper. The stage lights were hot, but Lena stood still as stone, heels planted, voice steady. 1,000 eyes stared back, investors, founders, executives, reporters with their fake neutral expressions and notebooks already half-filled. She could see the Graybridge partners in the front row, arms folded, faces neutral. This time, though, they were waiting for her. Behind her, the screen flicked through slides she'd now memorized down to the kerning. Market gaps, pilot results, scalable projections. Every single one was hers. The charts, language, even the color-coded maps. Her fingerprints weren't just on the presentation, they were the presentation. The deck hadn't changed much since that first stolen unveiling. Except now, there was no Jeremy. Now, there was no one to interrupt her flow with smug summaries or let me add asides. Just her, the truth, and a room full of people realizing they'd almost bet on the wrong voice. It was 23 minutes into a 25-minute talk when she reached the final slide. Black screen. In the center, a single pixel, white, one by one. A pause fell across the auditorium. Confused murmurs, shifting seats. Then the pixel began to grow, slowly, expanding frame by frame like a microscope panning out. The crowd leaned in. A phrase emerged beneath the resolution shift, "Own your work or someone else will." Lena turned to face them. "That pixel," she said, voice calm but cutting, was embedded in my original file. Invisible to the naked eye. But it was always there, like authorship, like truth, a pause. Someone tried to take my work and wear it like a suit, and for a moment it worked. Until the data reminded everyone who built it. Silence. Electric. This isn't just a presentation, she added. It's a reminder of how fast stories get rewritten and how quietly women get erased until we write ourselves back in. Room didn't applaud at first. They just sat with it, processing, digesting. Then someone stood, clapped, another, then more, until the whole space thundered. She didn't bow, she didn't cry. She just stepped back from the mic and let the pixel hang there, glowing like a tiny, defiant scar. The clip hit LinkedIn within the hour. By midnight, it had 600,000 views. Within a week, every startup podcast from Palo Alto to Park Slope was quoting her. "Own your work or someone else will." It showed up on t-shirts, mugs, tattoos. A tech blog called it the new move, fast and break things, only with ethics. She didn't reply to any interview requests, didn't post a celebratory selfie, just returned to her new office, modest, quiet, furnished exactly how she liked it, and opened her laptop. A fresh deck, new initiative, new build, but now every pixel was hers. Lena hadn't just reclaimed her work, she'd carved a warning into the system. And now, when people told the story, they didn't mention Jeremy, they mentioned the woman with the pixel. Big thanks, you legends of the old office days. Subscribe to keep the switch-flicking chaos alive. Your ex-boss is shaking in their loafers.